and also intentionally keeping them out of these spaces, just so when you have an ignorant mass, it's easier to control. So having a majority population being young, I mean, a lot of people don't want their engagement to be meaningful, because that would mean that we have to, or we can, hold government accountable. So it's also intentional to keep them in that silo.
All right, thank you very much, Nerima. Now I'm going to move over to Sam, who will tell us what it means to him to genuine and meaningful youth engagement.
Thank you, Angelo. And I'll just pick up from where Nerima has left off. When I think about meaningful youth engagement, I think about two words: intentionality and goodwill. We must be very intentional in the spaces that we engage the youth, and we must be very intentional for the actual work that they're given. So for me, the actual work actually means information, it means consultation, it means decision making, it means solution building, and it means representation. So that's my take really on meaningful youth engagement. If we put in intentionality and the actual goodwill for having the youth in these spaces, then we'll be able to meaningfully engage this youth.
All right, thank you very much. So thank you all so much for those powerful remarks. I just want to now open the floor so that we can have like a deeper conversation and a deeper dive into this conversation. And I just want to ask Pasi, if you feel like, because when you were talking about what you mean by meaningful youth engagement, you said that it is the involvement of young people from the beginning to the end. So I would like to hear from you. Do you feel like you personally, as you have been involved in whatever project from the beginning to the end? Do you feel like you have been genuinely involved as a young person, going by your definition and what you understand by meaningful engagement?
Yes, thank you so much, Ranjuru. I think for me, let me speak from my position at the Society for International Development. I am a product of mentorship. I was taken into the institution when I was an intern, and that's where I met Nerima, who was very younger back then, and I really watched her grow. I've watched myself grow in the development space as well. And for me, I feel like if the director at the time, Mr. Ali Hersey, didn't open up the organization for young people to come on board and actually be part and parcel of the development projects that were being run, then it kind of limits their growth capacity and being able to learn from experts in the field. What I really loved about my engagement back in 2016 is I joined as an intern, and already my mentality was, great, I'm going to be filing papers, serving tea, what Nerima was talking about, and taking notes in meetings. It was different for me. I was given a budget and I was told, great, you're going to organize a youth dialogue. Here's the budget. We're going to talk about electoral processes and meaningful engagement of youth in those processes. And I remember at the time being given that opportunity and that trust to actually deliver based on what I had studied was an intentional step towards ensuring that I am engaged respectfully, but also given the opportunity to grow, consult, and also bring other young people from the nation to participate. And that's why, from my experience, I'll say capacity building, I have experienced that. I have been meaningfully engaged from the beginning of a project up until now, and also I have been mentored, and that is part of the reason why I am who I am today and even here today. So for me, I have experienced that.
Okay, thank you very much. And have you engaged other young people meaningfully? It's just a follow-up.
And that's a good follow-up question.
Yeah.
So because of that opportunity, it's always good to pay back. There are people and are younger people who are exceptional and are younger than myself. So leading up to the years that followed, I constantly kept asking, great, we're exploring the future of energy in East Africa, but the future is about young people. At what point are we going to bring the young people to also kind of help us reimagine and shape the future of the energy systems that we're in this room talking about just as adult grown-ups. I was most of the time the only youth in the room. And out of that and out of interacting with other young people in different continents, we decided let's create and let's have what is now known as the SDG7 Youth Constituency, for which I am a part of, and I am contributing in accelerating youth participation at different levels. So it's always very important to, if you got the mentorship, you got the capacity, always bring other young people on board. And we have thousands of young people who interact with policymakers from all across the world and in a meaningful way. So we do offer capacity building for them, what we've learned, we're giving it to them so that they can also do the same in their countries.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for giving back the mentorship. I'm going to turn to you, Nerima. You talked about meaningful engagements being in particular rooms deliberately and intentionally, and I know that you're very specific about bringing young people into these rooms. So you, for you personally, do you feel like you have been genuinely involved with everything that you're doing to get young people into rooms, you as a young person and also the young people that you get into these rooms with? Are you genuinely involved in this kind of engagement?
Thank you. I'm laughing because I think my response will be genuinely kicked out.
Okay.
Because what ends up happening is, the places or the points of entry points or interventions, you know what I mean? So like you would know, for instance, I talked about public participation. So you would know when it's being had because there are cycles. So a lot of the times, especially with my organization, we invite ourselves, which because if we wait for the government to invite us, it's not going to happen.
They will never invite
even
you,
though they're supposed to. So just being proactive about when certain processes occur and, pushing that door open. So now where the challenge comes is remaining within and being involved within, because you always have to maintain a relationship. We found ourselves even educating duty bearers themselves on perception change. Because what you find is when you think government, they're always like, man, those guys, they're slow, they don't work, corruption every day. Why am I even wasting my time with Gava? And then when you talk to the government and you're like, do you want to have a youth meeting or meet the youth? Ayapana, youth are always angry. Every time they see us, they fight us. They try to fight us. We never even finish our meeting. So we always found that there are these two extremes. And so the challenge that has been for me has been maintaining some form of a relationship and identifying key champions within the county who work within government, who understand the importance of youth engagement, and also educating the youth, or even changing the perception that government can work and there can be some good people in government, even though it can let you down. It's not always 100%. It's not always 100%. There are some things within our government that actually function. And then I tell people, like even writing a letter, they have to respond to you. I mean, in 2 weeks, and even if they don't, you can follow up. So there are ways of doing things officially. There are a lot of times as young people we don't do. So I would say that now where I am, it's helped because, you can see like county assemblies like Kericho, they rope us in. They're like, you guys work with youth. We're thinking of having a TVET bill. We're thinking of doing a youth empowerment bill. How about you look at this bill and let us know what you think? So that's where now, because of that change, they begin to see that, okay, there's some youth that we can engage with and supports our work. It supports them because they want results as well. And that relationship is built. And why I'm saying I've been kicked out is because now, because of pushing for accountability, sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of the times it depends on leadership. The head really matters a lot. So if the head of whatever department you're dealing with is not open to youth engagement, meaningful engagement, then they become a stumbling block, an obstacle, because they just don't see. They don't see the need. So sometimes they can find you an annoyance because you're pushing for accountability. And that to them is just a lot of noise.
Yeah.
I'm reading the comments. So to them, that's just a lot of noise.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to recognize that there are challenges. So even though you're pushing for meaningful engagement, not everybody wants that. Not everybody wants an accountable governance system and young people who are engaged. So you will find those challenges. So keeping those doors open once you walk in, and also encouraging others to join within those spaces as well, and make it normal to be part of these processes for young people.
All right. So thank you very much. What I'm hearing from you is that refusing to be tokenized is an art, it's a science, it's a skill, and you are not taught these things at school. You learn them on the ground. I want to turn the conversation to Sam, and you talked about meaningful youth engagement as intentionality and actual goodwill. So I just want to find out from you, being a young person, an awarded young person, do you feel like you have been, have you been involved meaningfully in a way that is intentional and with a goodwill that you deserve?
I do not think so.
Okay.
I think I've been engaged in spaces where I have, actually pushed for it, just like Nerima,
Okay.
who says, you have to go there. If government does not open the door to you, then you have to go and knock that door.
Yeah.
I think I have also been that kind of person in spaces where I feel like I've been actually meaningfully engaged, then I have had to do that. And to also add to Pass's point around, creating spaces for other young people, I'll give us a very specific example of a discussion I've really been having over the last few weeks. Where I work, we wanted to create a shadow board for our board of trustees that would be only youth. That helps with to balance, because we are a youth serving organization. But then we kept going back and saying, how intentional are we? Because we are not creating spaces, or we're not creating tables for youth that do not make a difference. So that intentionality is what we actually need to put into the meaningful youth engagement. So I think personally for me, then, I would say for most of the places where I have been actually, had that meaningful engagement, I have had to push that door, and then you get people to accept you.
All right. All right. Thank you very much for that. I think we are going to have the third poll, which should be coming up on your screens. And we just want to know, we want to hear from you. So the poll should be coming up before Boni gives his remarks on whether, since he has been engaged in this platform for a long time. I mean, I like to think he's a young person, but the Constitution does not think he's a young person. But I would also like to hear from him about his experience with meaningful youth engagement, and also how he's leading the way in making sure that young people are meaningfully engaged. But before then, I'm just going to read out the poll where they ask, we just want to find out if you have ever encountered tokenism as a young person. So you will tell us whether or not you have encountered tokenism, and then I will read a few comments. And if you're watching, if you're watching on Facebook and on Twitter or anywhere, we would like you to use the hashtag, which I had seen a few minutes ago. My mind is a bit, okay. I'll just read a few comments from Pablo, an architect, and he completely agrees with Boniface that the youth are the most vital players in the building of a society. They are the most dynamic, creative, innovative, strong, and highly instrumental in the growth process and development of any nation. And then he says, unfortunately, authentic morality, which of course is the foundation of society, is now being shortchanged for selfishness, consumerism, and individualism. Then I will read one more comment, and then we can hear from Boni. Just give me a minute. Okay. So Hillary is saying that in Kericho, Siasa Place is running a program by the name of Defend Record Yako, which has been an amazing engagement where the MCAs defend what they have done in a youth community baraza. It has been a very good platform for the young people to push on accountability, to push for accountability issues in their respective wards. Thank you very much. And then Okay, Baguma is saying thank you, moderator, and Baguma. All right, thank you very much for joining us. So we're just going to now move over to Boniface Mwangi, who's going to talk to us about whether it is true that the youth have been tokenized, and also how we can reclaim back our time. So obviously he said that yes, we have been tokenized because we are eating crumbs, and he showed us the crumbs on his plate. But also, how can young people reclaim their time, reclaim their power, reclaim their untokenization?
So thank you very much for all your lovely contributions. I think one of the things to reclaim your time is to understand that you're important and that you're meaningful, and without you, there could never be change. I normally say this: if poor people love poor people, they would elect a good president for themselves. But poor people hate poor people, and that's why they don't elect good leaders for themselves. So if young people loved young people and realize that we own this country, we own this continent, and without us, these old men are going to be in retired men's home and retired women's home, then they can get back that power. So what have I done? Because you're asking, have I given young people a chance? When I used to work at Part 54, I was the oldest person in that organization. And now I'm 38. So you can imagine the age for everyone in that place was about between 25 and 30, or even younger.
Yeah.
When I joined the Ukoli party, I was the party leader and my deputy was almost similar age. So the truth is, we have to see ourselves in those leadership positions. And also we must be given the chance to fail. You know, people say, no, young people are going to let us down. But the freedom for this country and most African countries are fought by young people. It's young men who go to war. It's young women who go to war. It's the young women in the front line. It's the young men in the front line. So the truth is, for the liberation to take place, young people must take charge. There's no other way.
Yeah.
You have to run for elective office. If the leaders you have in power are not good leaders, kick them out. If the political party you're in does not represent your best interest, leave that political party. The reason it's called tokenism, because it's being given to you. But you see, leadership is not given to you. Change is not given to you. It's not like handed in a silver platter. You have to fight for it. So you can sit here and discuss how young people are suffering, how they're complaining, blah, 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 nyef, nyef, nyef. But if those young people don't take charge and say, it is my responsibility to get into power and to fight for that power, no one will ever give it to you. The guys you have in power won't live voluntarily.
Yeah.
They must be forced out. So they say, don't agonize, organize. But before you organize, get political education. Understand how things work. Because some of the young people want to get into power or want to get that change, don't even understand why they're doing it. They don't have an understanding of the history of struggle, that change is not an event, that things don't come easy. They're just thinking like change is like the way you put this cup of coffee in a microwave, then it warms in 2 minutes. Now, change is you go and look for a coffee bean, you prepare the ground, you plant, you water, you prune, then it matures another 30 years or 20 years. So the idea for us for change that we want to see in our continent is that what you're fighting for is for our kids. Yeah. So we push the struggle where by the time they're coming into place, they don't have to fight as much as you're fighting now. We make it easier for them. The same way our grandfathers fought for the freedom of this country. Then they left this country after they kicked out of the colonialists. But the guys who came after brought back the colonialists. So they never left. So our struggle is that by the time you get that change, you won't be young people. The real change, you won't be young people. However, our kids are going to be young. That's how you get change. You plant the coffee bean. You don't go and make Nescafe, because that's not real, not like I did.
All right, so let me ask you, so are we planting, or is there something that at least we've harvested? Because now we're going back to planting. Is there anything we've been left for at least?
Very good question. So today, I take part in protests and I do many other things. Yeah. The reason why I get arrested and I'm not in jail or dead is because our parents fought for the second liberation. They moved Kenya from being a one-party state to a multi-party democracy, number one. Number two, they fought for a constitution for 10 years, between 1990 to 2010 when you got it. So that was their legacy. So my mother died in 2000. She didn't enjoy the new constitution. I'm enjoying it. Yeah. So struggle of 20 years gave us the new constitution. So the truth is, there are gains we're enjoying today in Kenya because of what our parents did. That's the reason why there's no longer Nyautata chambers. They were closed down, right?
Yeah.
Because they paid the price. So what we must be ready to do in our generation is pay the price for our kids' future.
For the next generation.
So the question is, are we willing and ready to pay the price for their future?
All right, thank you very much. So what I'm hearing from what Buni has said is that number one, we need education. Number two, we need a little madness to kick out, leaders who are tokenizing us. And if you cannot kick them out, then you always have the option to leave spaces that are tokenizing you. So I'd like to hear from Percy. What exactly do young people need to succeed? Apart from the political education and the little madness, we all need some level of insanity so that we can stop being tokenized. But what more do young people need to succeed and feel genuinely involved? I'll start with you. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I guess for me, I'll put it, I totally agree with Bonnie, but I'll dare to use a different word. I think we need the audacity to actually march in and take control at different levels, because also engagement is at different levels. There's engagement at the political level, at the private sector level, so civil society, even academia. There's a lot of engagement that happens at that aspect of things. So for me, what do young people need? I think one, knowing your field, knowing the issues that are of interest to you. So if, for example, you want to make a change, and I'll use my example in the field of environmental sustainability or climate change, you got to know your facts. You got to know the figures. You got to know what your contribution is, because you will go out, you will fight for that inclusion on the table, like we've seen Greta Thunberg and her peers in the global north doing. And they will come to conferences and they'll tell you, according to what you are doing as governments, these are the figures and this is what we are demanding for and this is what you need to do. But look at it from our aspect of things. When we go out to the field, because we see other people doing these things, but when we begin to be interviewed, most of the times we don't have the facts and we don't have the figures. And somebody said something about it's about being recognized or individualism. Young people need to move beyond that. You have to know your contribution. You have to know your field. Also, you have to know your worth, because at some point when you're that person who had the audacity to actually go in and push and drive change and make it happen, they will finally invite you to every conference. Like Greta Thunberg, when she first went to the streets, she was just that young girl who's refusing to go to school. What's wrong with her? But now she actually makes sense. She's invited to like every conference. But when you're invited there, there's meaningful and respectful engagement. What I really like about the young people globally who have understood this is they go in with the audacity and say, great, you've invited me here to speak another year. What have you done differently since the last time I came and spoke? It's still the same story you're singing to us. As young Africans, we need to do that as well, and just know our facts. And then also leading by example. We definitely need that. Examples and figures such as Sam, Nerima, Boniface, we have to lead by example so that the younger people who are coming are like, if Bonnie could do it, I can do it too. If Nerima was able to push for involvement of young people in the political spaces, then this is the legacy that we need to carry forward. I want to conclude by giving an example of Japan, which is a country that I really, really love. These guys are super quiet. You never hear them in the global news. Do you know why? Like, these guys nurture their children from a very young age to be responsible, respectful, the value of humanity. They're taught from home to school to even when they get to work. And that cycle in culture has repeated itself. So when new generations of children are born, they're actually learning by seeing what other generations did. We need to nurture that. So there's a responsibility from home, from school, and from the different places that young people have to work. But we need to have the audacity to be willing to go in and do it and make it happen.
All right, thank you very much. When you talk about audacity, there's probably a young person listening to you and thinking, I don't have audacity. Me, I don't have the courage of Boni. Me, I cannot be arrested like that. Me, how do they, is it something you develop? Is it something you drink? Is it something you, how do you, what's the word? How do you exercise your audacity muscle if there's something like that? Or do you just wake up and you have audacity?
A very good question. I'm assuming that's back to me.
Yeah, that's back to you, yes.
Leaders are not born leaders unless
Okay.
you belong to like a monarchy like Queen Elizabeth and
Yeah.
the royalties of this world. So you're born and you're a prince, and one day you'll be a leader,
Yeah.
Leadership is taught, it is learned, it's a practice. You have to have the dust. Let me give my example. I actually used to say I'm very shy. Some people here might know this. I couldn't speak anywhere. The confidence, I would stutter a lot. I still do that a little bit from time to time. But practice and knowing your content really, really matters. You cannot be invited to a space and you're doing you gotta learn, you gotta teach yourself. And that's why I was saying you have to know your field, you have to know your contribution, you have to know what you're interested in influencing and then run with it. The other thing is you can't do everything. So if your pet subject, if you want to be that person, if you want to be the next Wangari Maathai, for example, you got to know why you want to be this person. You have to read, you have to know where our carbon levels, what are the levels of deforestation. You have to teach yourself these things. A lot of the time, when you have the intellect and the knowledge and the tools that you need, the confidence will just come out. You don't even have to like shout too much. It's just there. You know your worth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Thank you very much. There was a poll which was up online and I didn't get to announce the results. So 76% of you think that yes, we have been tokenized, and 24% of you think that no, we haven't been tokenized. I don't know. I would really like to hear from the young people on the chat who are saying that that they haven't been tokenized. I would really like to hear. I would really like to understand, like what sectors they are in, so where they are not being tokenized. I'm genuinely just curious about that. Also, please use the Q&A section. If you have any questions, then we can get back to you. And there's a question here from Preston Alan Wandera, who is asking, how do we shift the conversation so that it brings results? Because from where I sit as a journalist, most of the youth out there do not see the need to engage, yet there are no tangible results. So he says that no one is listening. I feel like Nerima has answered this question, and she has talked about, engaging with government is something. It is a science, it is an art, it is things you learn only when you're engaging. No one will tell you engage like this, engage like that. But I'll just shift it over to her. Maybe she can just emphasize or repeat something. Maybe you missed what she said. So Nerima, would you like me to repeat?
Okay. No, I had. No,
Okay,
I had a question. Thank you, Anjiru. I think it's a good question. It's interesting. It's coming from a journalist, because even when we started Siasa Place, we jumped into the election in 2017, and my team and I, we felt like within the stories, within the media, there's also a framing that happens, and a framing that paints youth as a certain way, which interestingly actually affects us without us realizing. It's very passive, but it's very strong. And even when you look at the opinion pieces within newspapers, right, you'd find that the hard-hitting stuff, the stuff that's discussing the debt of the country or discussing politics and, the movement and shifts of coalitions and power, things that, young people should be concerned about, because really those decisions are going to affect them much, much more than someone who is probably at the end of their life. You'll find that those articles or those stories are often written by very old professors who are often men. And, we wondered, we're like, don't you talk about this stuff too? Ama, we don't. So you also see that there's this framing where this discussion is for the old men, and it's only important for the old men. You youth, you have the insight in the insert in the paper, which is normally fashion, sometimes music, sometimes they'll do business, you know, with pals.
Yeah.
So you're just like, Allah. So I think also that's also important to note. And being a journalist, I love that you've asked that, because we felt that there was a gap, and that's actually where I started writing. That's why I had a column, and I had a column in the East African, and I'd always people would always ask me, why that paper? Nobody reads that paper. And I'm like, actually, the people who read that paper are normally like ambassadors, or, you know, very, very high level. And I'm like, for me, it was about sending a message that there are young people who are actually concerned about this country, who can be able to articulate issues at that level. And it wasn't for me about reach. It was a targeted approach of the people I wanted to target, who are people of influence. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are in charge of aid. And a lot of our governments depend on aid. And, you know, they can decide where these resources go to. And, you know, they can also push for youth, meaningful youth engagement of where these resources go. So that's one. Number two, also, I think that young people have an informal way of being engaged. And I know this is for Kenya for sure. As much as we're saying young people don't care, if you go to the base, or in, you know, like rural areas, in the ghetto, whatever, you know, where youth people are hanging out, a lot of them are jobless, some of them are drinking. What are they talking about? Politics.
Yeah.
They might be talking about, you know, a certain individual who came into the county. They are now thinking of, I mean, they are so in it. You would think that they are part of these meetings that happen. And sometimes they even know what's happening nationally when it comes to politics. But then when we're discussing the issues or access to their rights and things like that, they're so removed.
Yeah.
So I think it's also about how can we engage them to be even interested in the issues that they have, and the relation between the politics of every day and their lack of access to basic needs. I think that's where the breakaway is. And unfortunately, that has been the work of civil society, and civil society is completely underfunded. So you're here being underfunded, you can't reach these people. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we're just talking about, you know, people who have the knowledge, I feel, that gap where the people who have access to Zoom calls like this, conversations like this, information like this, and relaying that information and knowledge to people who might not have the access. And just being able to go out of your way, even if it means having these engagements with friends and family. I think it needs to change. It needs to be informal and at the individual aspect of a family unit.
Right. So I'm also seeing a question here from Sulemna Abdullahi, where he's asking, is it deliberate, or does it show a lack of tools, knowledge, ideas on how to engage the youth? In my view, it is a lack of sympathy. It is a lack of empathy and all of the above. And I think Nerima has mentioned that sometimes governments do not know how to involve young people. Sometimes young people do not know how to involve government. And so it is a learning curve for both of the parties. So we have talked a lot about what young people need. And now I just want us to talk about what we would want organizations, leaders, and governments in this country to hear, and what we would want them to do. And I'll start with you, Sam. You've been a bit too quiet, I think. So, so maybe you can tell us, what would you like organizations and leaders in this country to hear with regard to meaningful youth engagement?
Thanks. There's something similar about, you know, all those people that you've mentioned, and when you mentioned it at the beginning, how they see you. There is a notion of deficiency that, you know, they see youth as deficient, and therefore they deal with youth as deficient. They do programs to youth, not with youth, or not by youth, or they don't give spaces for, you know, youth to be engaged in such programs. I'll give a very practical approach that I've recently come into, and I feel really works. There is a framework called the Positive Youth Development Framework by USAID. And it's a framework that has 4 things that it looks at. Number 1, it works with youth to build their assets. So youth are assets. and they need, we need space to make mistakes, as Bonnie said. So that, because that's the only way we build such kind of assets. Number two, their agency. All these things we're talking about, the how courage does not just show up in the morning, or you wake up one day and you decide you're courageous. It's also about building their agency and working together with the youth in order to build them to be able to work effectively in spaces that we put them in. Number three, it's about their contribution. We've said, let's build their assets, let's build their agency. We need to channel what we build to active contribution, to active engagement. And number four, we need to provide an enabling environment. So that is all the systemic issues that we're speaking about, all the systemic barriers that youth face that, bar them from meaningful youth engagement. Then we need to shift that and shift the locus of power towards the youth instead of just empowering them. Because, if we shift the locus, then we're actually building a more sustainable change in that manner. So if governments, if organizations, if leaders could start engaging and, putting in their minds such kind of a framework, then we'll be able to get there. Yeah.
All right. So when you talk about enabling and creating an enabling environment, what is the one thing that you think would shift the environment? Like just one thing when it comes to an enabling environment, like what is the one thing you would want government organizations to do that would tip or that would just change the environment?
I would say, stop putting us into rooms that do not make sense to us.
Yeah.
Put us into rooms that, or if you need us to be in a room that does not make sense to us, then make that make sense to us. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, makes sense. Yes. So okay, yes, I hear you. All right, and thank you very much. So I'll just move over to Percy. And I know that you have, you've worked in organizations that have done a lot for meaningful youth engagements. But for organizations that are not like the organizations that you've worked, or the leaders that are not like the mentors you've had, what would you like to tell them with regard to engaging young people more meaningfully and in ways that matter?
Great. That's a very good question. What I would tell them is that there is need to institutionalize youth engagement. And what do I need by this? It is very, very important to have spaces where young people can interface directly with decision makers. Because yes, we do talk to ourselves. Peer-to-peer engagement happens a lot, but that doesn't change much. We really need to be at the same level with people who have influence, and there are institutions who have the capacity to do that. I want to reference another institution that I'm very privileged to work with. It's the School of International Futures. It's based in the UK, and what they have done is they have acknowledged the fact that there are incredible change makers from Africa that never get to interface with change makers at all. So they have great ideas that they're just sleeping on, either because they don't have the access to these people, or they're intentionally blocked out, like we don't want to hear what you have. And because they have the power and the access to these people, they then bring young people in as cohorts on different subjects. So for example, we just finished working on the future of data governance in Africa with 22 young people from across the continent. They have visioned what they want for that future, and now we're opening them up to have interactions with policymakers who deal directly with issues of data privacy, data governance. And the kind of issues that especially young Nigerians are going through with the ban on Twitter and arrests because they're tweeting and protesting online with movements such as NSAS. These are young people who need to speak to their policymakers and make them understand why data and technology is important for their development and the change that they're doing. So institutions need to take a step, especially civil society institutions, foundations who have access to policymakers. That's one. Number two is for young people also, you really have to be self-organized, you have to be self-led, and we really have to be youth who are serving for fellow youth as well. So we must not dictate what young people need. That's for the institutions. You have to let the young people tell you what they need because they live in those realities. I want to close my answer by coming back to what Nerima was saying. I want to cite the AU Agenda 2063, which clearly is a roadmap for Africa's future, right? But it's so sad that the people who came up with this roadmap were the people who will probably not be alive in 2063. They did not involve young people in drafting this roadmap for Africa's future. Again, Boniface said your children will need to be, by the time that future is coming, we're gone. Bringing young people onto the table now helps you to interface with their needs and helps you to enable them to co-design those futures that you're working on. That is meaningful youth engagement, and that is how institutions can help. So AU, bring young people in meaningfully and engage them in these future pathways for Africa.
All right, thank you very much, thank you. So Nerima, you've worked with with county governments and many organizations, and many times when I hear people talking about young people, we are always being told, do this, be that, dress like this, do like this, but then it's not just our responsibility to get ourselves involved. So I think I'm just repeating the question, but in different words. What would you tell organizations about engaging young people meaningfully? Yeah.
Thanks, Wanjiru. I think that that's a tricky one because that's actually a challenge that I have right now. Because what happens is when people, especially, all the institutions, because when I'm talking about government, governments have been there for years, independence. And even when you're talking about, agencies, they have normally been there for a very long time. Some of them older than our parents. So there's a certain way that they work. And one of the things that has been a challenge is, this thing of social media. COVID has actually changed the way people view social media. Before COVID, it was just very difficult to even ask for, a budget for credit or airtime or data. Like they're not understanding what do you mean? What do you mean you want to have this conversation on Facebook? And look at us today. So those are some of the changes that have happened, and COVID has actually speed up older institutions to understand these processes. But another thing that I have seen as a challenge is the way young people organize. So I always say, sometimes when we enter some of these communities, you will find like the most active youth group is not registered. They are very fluid, but everybody knows they exist. Paka chief, I mean, they are recognized to the point where they have an opinion. They are very important. They are stakeholders. But then on paper, these guys don't exist. So you find that a lot of institutional setting is, if they don't have a registration, hata kama hawana, paperwork ya CBO, you can't work with these guys. What do you mean? Why don't they have papers? And so you find that even when youth come together and organize, it's fluid, and people understanding that it's okay to be fluid. Like we don't have to be forced to be within certain regulations and systems. And I see that shifting, and for some institutions that's difficult to comprehend. And even the growth of these movements, even these hashtags, and you see people grappling with, oh my God, access to Twitter. When we saw Nigeria, they were trying to ban Twitter, or even when we saw, end SARS and things like that, where they're talking about police brutality, really, which is affecting young people the most. So, they're talking about an issue that's national that also affects people in rural area who don't have access to the internet. But it's the internet that made it a mainstream media item and actually caused the country to seize. So these are some of the things that I see governments struggling with. And for us, the use of social media has helped us a lot.
Yes.
Because even just the simple thing of people taking videos of dispensaries that are incomplete and putting them on Facebook, and it trends, and then the next day the governor is wondering, why is this place not complete? What happened?
Yeah.
So you're able to push things so fast with Facebook that 10 years ago would have said, that's impossible, that can never happen. And that for me is key. But also, and I say this all the time, people think that just because everyone is a youth, at some point in their life, everyone is an expert at youth engagement. And I think that's an area that we are very green to, because what I'm saying is, I think working with young people is actually a profession. And I think it's beginning to change, because even with this generation that's coming in, that is more IT savvy, they are quick when it comes to certain issues, or, you know, highlighting issues, very different. So the biggest obstacle we had was when the second reading of the public participation bill, we had actually submitted that feedback from social media should be considered as true.
Yes.
And the way we were laughed at, like, this is crazy. Like, the assembly was like, you can't do that. That's insane. That's not true. Like, social media feedback on a particular bill or an issue or a budget, we cannot count it as opinion. We have to have a physical meeting. We have to sit in a room, and someone has to tell me to my face, I see them, it's coming out from their mouth. And then that's the only way their feedback is going to be collected. So those are some of the things that I see as challenges, and as the future continues to grow, we have to now define, because even the challenges that we're going through, access to food, climate change, global pandemic on health, like these are things our parents are just like, what's that? What's that? And so it's new for everybody. And so the ones who have solutions are young people. But then when you see the hierarchy of where young people are engaged, they're always at the bottom. And that's how you have mismatch of priorities and a development agenda that doesn't make sense. When Percy is talking about Agenda 2063, like it would not make sense to a young person now because of the concerns that they are more concerned about or having access to were not even thought about when they were drafting some of these things.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. So the hashtag, because Nerima has mentioned social media and the hashtag I was trying to find the hashtag. The hashtag that we are using is moving beyond tokenism, hashtag moving beyond tokenism. And I'm seeing that we have very many questions, but I'm going to combine two questions from Zablon and from Pato. So Zablon is asking, I think youth are making some noise, but a number of us are shouting very loud underwater. No one will hear you, having in mind the current political waves. I long for a meaningful and genuine conversation on our current plight. Is there hope? And then Pato is asking that we have acknowledged that those who have the audacity to speak out are sidelined by those in power. How do we then ensure that those who have the audacity to speak out create tangible impact with their voices and actions? And I will think, and I think I will direct this question to Boni, who has done a lot of work with, with being courageous and the audacity and walking away from spaces and creating spaces. So yeah, I would like him to take on those questions. Would you like me to repeat the?
Please do.
Okay, all right. So Zablon is asking that I think I think youth are making some noise, but a number of us are shouting very loud underwater. No one will hear you, having in mind the current political waves. I long for a meaningful and genuine conversation on our current plight, but is there a hope? And then I will combine that with Pato, who is asking, how do we ensure that those who have the audacity to speak create tangible impact with their voices and action? So I think the question is, okay, so now we have spoken, then what?
So the first part of the question is about, is there hope?
Yes.
There's hope. As long as you're alive, there is hope. As long as you're breathing, there is hope. As long as you can be able to organize, there is hope. If you lose hope, you're dead. So the living must keep on being hopeful. That's the reason why even in war-torn countries, guys who should wish to be dead still fight to survive in refugee camps, because they think that tomorrow is going to be a better day. So hope is going to be there as long as there's human beings existing.
Mm.
The second part is, why are those guys who have the courage alone? Because of your cowardice and your fearfulness and your silence. No matter how much you amplify 10 people, there'll never be a million people. What you need to get in those 10 people is get to be 100,000, 200,000, 500,000. So we can't make those people to be hard if they're just 10. The way to be hard for them to become 11, to become 20, to become 30, to become 40. Join them.
Yeah.
The problem we have with young people of our continent, they want active citizens to fight for them. They want others to fight for them, others to speak for them. Then they don't want to do anything about it. They're just waiting for other people to pick up their fight, which is their fight. One of my biggest struggles that makes me very upset is that, number one, I'm not poor. I don't have problems. I started working when I was 13, 14 years old, got employed, worked in private sector, got money, then became an activist. I have a medical cover. My kids go to a private school. I don't even use a matatu. That's a fact of life. That's my life. When I go out of my way to fight for good public schools and good public hospitals and a better life for everyone else, I get insulted. I get beaten down. I get arrested. And that's the reason why poor people, the people suffering, must actually realize that the fight belongs to them. Then we join them. Because I'm actually upper class, middle class. I'm not even bragging. The problem that I actually have with poor people and young people is that you want others to fight for you. I have 3 phones here. I wake up to people's problems. They don't pay me. I've never earned a single cent from public coffers. No one pays me. But these young people feel they're entitled to your time, to your voice, to your platform, to everything that you've created. They want to own you, but they're not willing to pay the price. Now, those people who have audacity and courage need you to join them for this struggle to be won. They need you to raise your voices, and also they need you to become part of the struggle. Suka yoko nje, I campaign in Bukuru slums, very poor areas. Someone lives in a house, 5 people in the family, 3 kids, wife and husband. They shit in paper bags. I go there and say, I'm going to create toilets in this community. There's going to be community libraries in this community. Then they ask me, what tribe are you? Who are you voting for president? And that is the nonsense. So remember this. There's no activist who is your savior. I'm not God. I'm not Jesus. I'm not Muhammad. I'm not Allah. I'm not Buddha. I'm not whatever you believe in. We are here together in this struggle together. So don't ask the minority fit to come and fight for you. You have to join them. Even me, I bleed blood. So come and we bleed together if there's going to be bleeding. Not telling me, and not pigania ni sawa tu. Because if you outsource your anger to people like me and outsource your frustration to people like me, then you know what, I'll just say, you know what, let me go on Netflix and chill. So don't expect saviors to come. There are no saviors. Wangari Maathai was no fucking savior. She did what she loved most and people joined her. So remember this, whoever you are, wherever you are, there are no fucking saviors. The struggle has leaders, like Wangari Maathai was a leader, but she couldn't do that with other people who supported the struggle to ensure that Karura was protected, that trees were planted, people moved into the forest. She couldn't do that as a one woman. Women joined her to do this thing. What's so hard for young people who are very young and courageous, not courageous, strong rather, courage comes later. What's so hard for you to join this struggle to fight for the future that you want and the present that you want? You've got nothing to lose. You're unemployed. You don't have a medical cover. Sometimes maybe you don't even have kids. You're in poverty. What's going to be so hard for you to fight to make a difference? You're already poor. What's else could happen? Die? Maybe there's heaven up there. You die and go to heaven. Or you're afraid of death and you're poor. So if your problems are not big enough to make you struggle and suffer, then enjoy. Enjoy where you're living and enjoy your problems where you are. Because this country is sold out. Young people sold out for 50 bob. 50 bob. We sold out this country for 50 shillings. And when you complain, you troll us. And you ask for more accountability from non-politicians, from civil society, from active citizens than you ask from your leadership. Guys who don't even earn from your money. Young people, you need to have a lot of introspection. Look inside of you and ask yourself, what the hell is the problem with me? Because right now, the biggest problem we have is the man in the mirror, which is me, the person staring back at you. Because the people who are in power right now, we're the foot soldiers, refuse to be their foot soldiers, refuse to bend over so that no one rides on you. Stop bending over and stop having expectations from strangers. Have your own agency, yourselves, wherever you are. Say, I will be responsible and accountable to the change I want to see in this world, not someone else.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I just want to do a follow-up question. So now, to the young people who are listening to you and they want to get involved, they want to get involved in holding government accountable, they want to get involved in the movement, in the struggle, in the liberation. So what do they need to look out for so that they're, because it's very easy for poor people to be exploited. It is very easy for people who are like on a lower power dynamic to be exploited. So what can they look out for when they join this movement and when they join like the work that Nerima is doing? What can they look out for to avoid being exploited and to also avoid, to be part of someone else's agenda? Because it's also easy for people to be part of someone else's agenda without even knowing what exactly we are contributing. So what do they need to look out for? What do we need to look out for?
Look out for your self-interest. And if you look at religion, it's about salvation. If you look at what there's no you work, you get paid. So ask yourself, the movement that I'm joining and what I'm doing, how does it serve my interest and the community's interest? And most of the time, the community's interest align, but sometimes our self-interest does not align. So look at where we are going to. One of the best ways to get accountability in a community is to go to ask yourselves, what do we need in this community? And then among the candidates or among these movements, which ones serve our best interest well? Then join that particular movement. And guess what? Good movements don't destroy, don't exploit, don't leave you hurting. They don't break you, they build you. And so I think one of the biggest failure in this country is that the people who came in the second liberation and the first struggle for independence never told their stories and shared how they became who they became. And so if those stories were laid out, we'd actually have heroes that is beyond Jesus and Muhammad and rappers and other people. We'd actually have real heroes who are ancestors and say, my great-grandfather did this, my ancestors, because that's the reason why Israel is still standing. You talk about ancestors, you ask about America, talk about our forefathers, but our forefathers in this country are crooks and wicked people. And so if there's no hero in your community, become your own hero. There's no nothing wrong with that. Become your own hero, say, I want to say this and I want to change this. Let me give a very quick story. There was a man sent to God to go to a community and was told, go and tell those communities that they're going to perish. He goes to the community, says, oh, God sent me here, you're going to perish. Oh, you guys are wicked. The people say, okay, we have heard you. He says that 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. He keeps saying the same thing over and over again. Then they asked him, why do you say these things? The very first time you came, we heard you. And then he told them, I'm saying these things so that I don't forget why God sent me here. This was the message. So what you do, keep on the message, whatever you believe in. Just be consistent. Wangari Maathai planted the first trees in the 70s. She won the Nobel Prize in 2004. That's about 30 plus years later. The first time a black man ran for president was Jesse Jackson in the 80s. Obama became president in 2008. And that's what I'm saying. Play the long game, not a sprint, play the long game. It's a marathon. So just say, this is where I'm going to stick on this thing. William Tunga went to jail in 1982. He became Chief Justice 2010, 2011, 28 years later. So plant those seeds today. Plant those trees today. Plant that change that you want to see. You become that change. And guess what? When you become that change, people join you. The first time I protested, I was alone, one man. Later on, other mad people joined me. If I'm going to say, right now I'm in my house, if I say I'm leaving and I'm going to the streets right now, I can guarantee it'll be like 10 people. So it's good. You see, there's growth. Just stick to the message. That one thing that you really care about. For Wangari Maathai, it was tree. For Nerima, it's young people. For you, environment. You see, those things, stick to those things. Don't try to do multiple things. No one remember you for multiple things. Pick one issue, stick to it, keep on.
All right. Thank you very much. I would like to just allow Percy to speak because she's about to leave. So just like a closing remark, anything you want to say, anything that you feel like you have left out. No, not anything. What what message or advice would you give to any young person, who's listening to you and wants to engage, but is worried about being tokenized? What would you tell them? Either a warning, advice, opportunity, you have anything.
Okay, I think Boniface has really done a good job in giving that advice, and I really don't want that message from him to be diluted. I mean, and I also kind of talked about it earlier. Know your struggle and fight for it. Pick your issue and learn, teach it to yourself and run with it and push for that change. You can't do everything, just as Boniface said. You're only one person. And the beautiful thing is that the continent is majority young people, because I know we have people joining from other countries. So you have other young people who will take up those other issues that you might be interested in fighting for, but you're only one person with your own capacity. I just want to also just say something. As young people, we must take charge of our affairs. I don't know why we always feel like we're limited. Sometimes I used to think it's because of the things that have happened, have traumatized us and are really limiting us from reaching our potential and coming out. Those issues of the past, be it post-election violence, that have traumatized us and said, nikienda hapo nitapigwa. We need to move beyond that. And again, the question of audacity comes in. I want to say that there are competent young people out there that can also be ministers, that can also be presidents, that can also take charge of ministries of youth affairs and all those ministries that young people are represented by older people. We have the courage to do that. I want to give an advice to institutions or governments if they're listening in. And I also want to give them advice because I know this conversation was motivated by young people who said when they go for conferences outside and the governments are there, they're not meaningfully engaged. And I want to say there has to be a proper youth engagement structure in the institutional level that is inclusive for all young people, not closed or unfair and not transparent as it tends to be. You bring one person in and say, we're engaging youth. That is the tokenization that happens. Institutions need to move beyond that. For institutions that are listening and are going to COP and want to engage young people in those climate negotiations, there has to be a mechanism for a youth advisory team that follows due process, application process, a nice selection process of young people are competent, not just picking from anywhere and everywhere and then saying, great, we are engaging youth and we have a youth advisory group who's leading and nobody has ever heard of them. I also want to give an example of Seychelles. So I hope we have Kenyan policymakers who are listening. Seychelles actually have a delegation of young people who go in as climate negotiators on behalf of Seychelles to the climate conferences, and they're paid the same amount of money that their national negotiators are paid. That is meaningful youth engagement. You've appreciated them, you've recognized their competence to negotiate on behalf of young people from Seychelles, and they're sitting on the table equally like everybody else in their competence. Now, my final comment, and then I will leave. People who are engaging with young people, especially those who are giving their time and expertise, please pay them. If it's internship, please pay those interns. And I say this because of one very important reason. There are young people out there who also have responsibilities and they are also breadwinners in their families. It might be just that one person who is able to go and bring back bread and they have been the only person who has been educated. If a young person comes to you with their experience and expertise and you tell them, okay, I will give you peanuts, it happens. Finally, we know of young girls who are exported as cheap labor from the continent to go and serve other people out there. They're maltreated, they're beaten. Some of them even come back to the continent dead. we need to protect our young people. Young people in the continent and in Kenya are not cheap labor. We are young people, we have energy, we have the strength to build our continent, and that all starts with knowing our worth and also being meaningfully and respectfully engaged in all levels. And with that, I just want to say thank you and yeah.
Thank you, and thank you very all right, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your remarks. So I just want to turn it over to Sam for your final remarks. What should you advise young people? And please make it very short, because I don't want us to run out of time. We have 5 minutes, so I'm going to give you 1 minute, for your final remarks.
All right, thanks. What I want young people to realize is that tokenism is just 2 steps away from either being used as a decoration or being manipulated. And sometimes you might think you're being tokenized and you might be comfortable with that, but in real sense, you're being manipulated. So refuse to be manipulated and do not wait to be empowered, because you actually have a voice. This story about finding your voice, you have a voice, you just have to use it. How you decide to channel it is your own problem, and find that and make that problem into a solution. And that is the only way to be able to, shift the locus of power back to the youth. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Nerima, your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just have to agree with what everyone has said. And also the self-doubt. I realize a lot of young people have this, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, because even sometimes when we're in these rooms, we're like, but me, I don't know anything. But why am I talking? So by the time you even open your mouth, you've already completely negated why you are of value. So I think we also need to change that. Bye, Percy. I think we also need to change that about ourselves, and also just the willing need to learn more. Not all of us are here. We're in these spaces right now. We learned. We all learn. It's a process, like Boni has said. So it's not something that just lands on you and it happens. So it's just to encourage young people that it's possible.
All right. Thank you very much. Boni, your final words.
My final words.
Final 5 words.
All right. So you can never achieve anything without courage. We need to be courageous to get anything that you want. To fall in love, you need courage. To flirt, you need courage. To go to church, you need courage. To believe in the existence of Jesus. To send that risky WhatsApp message, you need courage. So anything that you want to do in life requires courage. So, and for those who don't have courage, they don't live, because you're always in cowardice. You always live half-heartedly. And I think the biggest regret you're going to get in life is that if you fail to try and then you die full of ideas and full of many other things that you never tried, you're going to regret. Because maybe, just maybe, this is the only life you got. This is the only moment that you have. Take advantage and seize the moment. Your own bloody savior. So go bloody save yourself and have courage.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you to all our panelists. I am just going to give my thoughts on what I understood and what we have discussed today. Is that number one, for both the players, the young people and the organizations and the government and everyone, we are like, we are not experts of one another. We don't know what the government is thinking. The government doesn't know what we're thinking. And so there needs to be like a deliberate a deliberate relationship. We also need to be very selfish, because the other side is very selfish. And I love what Boni said, his opening remarks, that when young people love young people, then we are going to, we're going to move according to what we really truly desire. Because love is the beginning of the revolution. Love is the beginning of everything. So if we start from there, then we might avoid the tokenization. I also love what Nerima talked about learning curve, about the learning curve when dealing with the government. The government sometimes does not even know how to engage young people. Just because you're a government, it doesn't mean that dealing with young people gives you the expertise to deal with young people. So be open to learning, be open to social media. Don't box yourself. Don't Don't put yourself in a fix. I also like what Sam said about intentionality and actual goodwill. It is very important. We need to be intentional. Government is very intentional. We might not see it, we might not understand it, but the intentions are not probably for us, but they're very intentional. So we are the ones who need to start with the intentionality. And finally, no one is coming to save us. In the words of June Jordan, we are the ones who are going to save ourselves. So thank you very much. I was your moderator, Wanjiru Nguhe. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to every participant. Thank you for your comments. I was not able to read all of them, but I was seeing them, and thank you very much. I tried to incorporate them in the questions, and thank you for all of you who asked questions. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. And for the foundation, I am told that that they will have, like, in case your question was not answered, then there will be an email, and your responses will be, they will be emailed to you. I don't know if I'm correct or wrong, but that's what I've been told. So not me, the foundation. But thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. And this has been a really, really eye-opening conversation. Let me see if I have forgotten anything. No, I have not forgotten anything. So if you are inspired, let me just finish. If you're inspired to learn more about the great work that Wangari Maathai Foundation is doing, so you can visit the website at www.wangarimathai.org. You can also follow them on social media. They are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram is Wangari Maathai Foundation. And also, if you're very generous, you can also contribute. When you go to the website, there are places where you can contribute to the wonderful work that they're doing. You can either contribute monetarily, or you can also, like if you have any skills. And please note, if you have skills, do not agree to be tokenized. Yes. So thank you very much, and have a lovely evening. And also, please remember to mask up, sanitize, social distance, stay safe, stay warm. Even if we need courage to send risky texts, please don't send those risky texts. Babies are expensive, you people. All right, yes. So thank you very much, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.